Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
I must admit, when I moved to the United States, it was the end of the 80s. I actually had an instinct to cut photographs from the New York Times. I just thought that whatever was on the paper, it was so arresting. And you were 10 years in by then. What was your original thought when you carved out a photograph? And I'm thinking about how you chose them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I have to begin by saying that I kind of realized, it occurred to me around the age of 16, which is young, fortunate, that I was a collagist. I like making collages. Wasn't a filmmaker yet, but I liked putting things together, objects. And so I unconsciously, really, I started doing what collagists do, which is I surround myself with things to put together. So that's in a general way, that was the sort of the imperative. Specifically, I was always a reader of the news, and always, images, and a kind of burgeoning archivist, along with that collagist inclination. And so, to make a long story short, I got my first job after graduate school, and I realized that I suddenly had to work I had to pay the rent, and I couldn't devote 1,000% of my time to working, to my work, to my work, struggling with work and job,
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow it occurred to me that I could, back to this word hunch that I introduced this program with, I had a hunch that I could just accrue an archive over time, however long it took. I wasn't thinking
Mm-hmm.
big picture, long term, that I would just begin collecting photographs from the newspaper every day and just see where it led. And in other words, the idea was, I knew that my life was about to change because of the job, but it gave me something to do every day to remind myself, you're not really, don't define yourself by the job. You have to still stay connected to your work. So it was sort of an unconscious strategy that, and I made other films over that time and managed to navigate job, work, and that equation. But I kept working kept cutting the New York Times photographs, and of course you amass a certain, you amass enough that you then have to sort them. You can't just keep them in boxes. So the sorting became a project unto itself. Categories that evolve, categories that change, categories that grew. And then I needed boxes to put them in. So 100 boxes, then 200 boxes, then 400 boxes. And so it just grew over the decades. And yeah, that's...
To me, as I was watching the film, one of the electrifying things about it is that the way it makes you feel part of the world. You're in it. And it's very humbling, but it's also very exciting, because whether it's tragedy or joy or art or strangeness, or you're it. And you have the wonderful Virgil line at the beginning. It says, "No days should be, left behind or erased from memory."
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about this way of capturing the world as we are the world? We are what we're seeing, and it's us.
Yeah. By the way, I realized in the long-winded answer to your first question, I didn't actually answer your question. Okay, and I apologize for that. But allow me to do so in part of the answer to your second question. So I don't know. In the early days, I just cut out photographs. It could be 1, it could be 5, it could be 10, that sort of intrigued me. We all, also it was new. I was, so forgive me for saying, like a fire, They were black and white in those days. Whatever it was, just things that intrigued me.
Mm-hmm.
Things that intrigued me. No reason even. Things that intrigued me. Although what's interesting is, I couldn't have made this film if I hadn't had the instinct to cut out photographs of people reading newspapers. That meta thing, because I had a lot of them. So I was attuned to that from the very beginning, and media in general, you know. So and over time, you know, then you build a collection. You realize, wow, I have 600 photographs of floods, you know, and I have 800 photographs of explosions and you know, and all of this. And so then you start to think, my God, I've cut out. What are they doing to me? What does it mean to watch? To have cut out, and by the way, when even just the act of cutting, you're immersing in the photograph. You know, it becomes a part of you, and then even just for that moment, in the early days of cutting, you absorb it and you remember it. You know, and so I was remembering all those images. Maybe by the by, I was sort of expanding my memory. You know, without even understanding what that means, because in 2014 or so, when I realized, I'm jumping ahead, just bear with me for a second. I didn't want it to say, well, he collected images he collected images from the newspaper for like 37 years. You know, it had to be a nice even number. It sounds better. So, you know, 2019, starting to 1980 to 2019 was 40. It occurred to me maybe go to 50. But you know, I didn't want to push it. So in 2014, roughly 5 or 6 years before, this project, which had the sort of gravitas and weight and inertia of a what do you call the big heavy boats?
Freight tanker?
A freight tanker or a ocean liner. Yeah, you can't stop an ocean liner on a so I knew I had to like gradually, you know, and so then I had to start thinking about storytelling. I had to think about what images, what have I kind of both learned and gleaned and understand, you know, kind of make sense, you know. I understood. I started to think about what type of, this was a film, but it was also sort of an art project in a way, and understood that I was now in this territory. That's what artists do. Artists take the world apart and then put it back together, you know. And I entered into that space. I understood that I was trying to tame the world in a way, which I also knew was rather, you know, a sort of quixotic, impossible thing. But I also knew that I also felt the challenge of taking the chaos, taking the morass of images that come at us each day, and the pressure of that, and the chaos of that, and try to turn it into something beautiful, maybe even something useful, you know? And by doing that, in 2014, it made me look at my entire collection differently. And it made me look at photographs that came in the newspaper after that point. Now, you know, they now had a new poignancy, because now I was in the process of unifying everything, trying to tell a story, trying to make sense of it with a goal towards finishing in 2019. You know, that's also when I started buying 2 copies of the New York Times every day. Because in the old days, you know, in the old days, if there was a good photo on page 7 and a really good photo on the page 8 on the back of it, I had to choose, you know, tough, choose which one. And now I realize, nope, we're, you know, there's the ocean liner, but also you know, I'm landing the plane. I now have to, and so if I had to have access to both. So, and by the way, I just want to say, there were 2 newsstands near my home. Sherry and I get the newspaper delivered to our home every morning. That's the one I devoured, but I always went out and got a second one at one of the 2 newsstands. Sometimes I would buy 2 at the newsstands. I had no idea why anyone would buy 2. They had no idea where I would say, do you have a better copy, not so wrinkled? And I never told them. what I was doing until the end, when I asked them if I could put their names in the credits, which I did, you know. So
I think you said that one of the motivation to go from the 2016 election were a motivator to go from the archiving moment to this is going to become a film. Can you why and
well, I mentioned 2014, but if you're talking about 2016, and it's related because I'll just a little frivolous thing, and then I'll talk about 2000, because 2016, the whole world changed. We're still, anyway.
Stuck with it.
Well, yeah, we're stuck with it, yeah. But one of the first things I did is I scanned 2,000 photographs just to get a kind of critical mass in my computer, just to see what I could do. You know, it was like they say a proof of concept or something. So two areas of imagery that I focused on, for instance, were the baseball and music and the Conductors. And what I did is I wanted to make the film as cinematic as possible. I'm a filmmaker. I wanted to imbue it with all sorts of cinematic devices and joys that come with being a filmmaker. So I had all these photographs of baseball players, let's just say pitching and hitting. So imagine, animation is the most synthetic form of cinema, because you're taking single frames and creating motion, succession of motion. So if you imagine a pitcher winding up and be in this position in this year, in this game, on that team, and then the next position, I found the pitcher in the next sequence of winding up from another year and another team and another game. Anyway, I could put 24 different years, different teams, different games, but the pitcher's motion would be in proper sequence. And I put it together, and you know what? I created the illusion of a pitcher throwing a baseball. I thought that was kind of cool. So I did the same thing with a hitter, each 24 stages of hitting, different teams, different games, different years. It didn't matter, as long as the bat was in there. And I could have the pitcher pitch to the batter, and the batter could swing. And also, the batter could miss, or the batter could hit. I had the cells, I had the frames to make that kind of stuff happen. Also with a conductor, I have a conductor from this orchestra and this year with a baton here or there, and I could create the rhythm of the conductor. So that was exciting, and just at that level, that cellular level, that was exciting, interesting. Okay, 2016, we all know what happened, and that changed the film for me in so many ways. And we could talk about that, of course, but let me just say, if Hillary Clinton had been elected, it's a very different film. It's a very different film. My mission would have changed. Freedom of the press wouldn't have been, have had a prominent role. Fake news wouldn't have been part of the film. In a way, as I watch the film with you today, you could see it as if you're finding a newspaper from some day in the past. Some things are still there, floods still happening, fires still happening, explosions and wars and all that. But some things have gotten worse. This film is both like every day's newspaper. It brings the past with it. It's a snapshot of the present, but it also harkens. It has the power to be seen retroactively, to see where time goes. So I see this film now as a, it's a snapshot of I don't want to say, it's not that it's a snapshot of 40 years, but it's a snapshot of someone of what I did in 2019 with everything I knew, with everything I felt, with how I reckoned with being a citizen of the world, a reader of the news, you know, someone engaged with what was going on, in and around being a receiver of the news, and in some cases having been embedded in two stories that were big news, you know, on both sides of the page, right, in it and outside of it. And so I don't have to tell you, there's a lot. We don't even talk about fake news anymore, right? We're way past that. You know, that's already that that water in the river where the canoe is way past that. You know, a lot of things. You know, he still complains about the New York Times in his own way, but you know, I have a. You should ask another question if you want.
No,
if you
no,
want.
no. Then
Sorry.
we're gonna open it. No, I'm
Whatever it is,
just waiting for you to finish. Don't
No,
worry.
yeah, I wouldn't finish. That's the problem. Yeah.
Okay, then let's open it. So, there's a question right there.
So you had, oh, thanks. That helps. So the imagery of this film is a total of 7,076 images or whatever. My question is more of a technical one. How do you manage the copyright?
Okay, well, that's a complicated question. It became a complicated question. It's not my favorite subject, but I'll go there with you. We'll see where it goes. So I finished the film. Just going to tell it straight. Okay, I finished the film in the fall of 2019. It premiered at Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival. It then showed in New York City at what's called Doc NYC. I took it to Amsterdam. It's IDFA, it's an internet festival, and where it won an award even. So everything was looking good. HBO purchased the rights to show the film. I had a broadcast date. And anyway, the New York Times found out. I never told them I was making the film. Okay, let me back up also to say that, of course, I showed the film to lawyers along the way. Okay, and I can tell you that every lawyer I showed it to told me, you're fine. In fact, some of them even referred to you're the poster child for fair use as a project like this. I don't want to hijack the conversation to say why. You know, transformative use of the photographs. You didn't show up as a collagist, didn't declare yourself a collagist the day before. You've been doing this kind of thing your whole life. And there are any number of reasons. And also, and HBO, by the way, was great. Well, HBO was great to me throughout the entire experience. And by the way, you can't get a broadcast date on HBO unless the HBO lawyers think it's cool. All right. So, but everyone knew that we were pushing the envelope a little bit, maybe a lot of bit. But in any event, New York Times found out about the film, didn't like it, the idea. And they made things very difficult to the point where the broadcast had to be first postponed, then it had to be canceled. But this is also this is also rhyming in time with COVID. So all the festivals that I had been lined up to show the film didn't happen. You know, were canceled or didn't happen. So I didn't feel totally devastated because I couldn't go here, there, and there anyway. It took a year and a half, and then it became a kind of high-powered lawyer, law firm to law firm thing, and then we settled. We'll just as we settled. So you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. This was the most difficult project I've ever engaged in my life for a lot of reasons, but also I never had more fun doing anything. You know, as an archivist, as a collagist, as someone who's worked with what filmmakers call found footage, you know, things that come at me that I love to make sense of. Imagine new footage came to my doorstep every day, you know, every day. And it was a joy. I opened up the door, I would gobble it up, that New York Times, every day. And by the way, since I mentioned that again, I just would say, I don't know how you see it, but I see the film amongst whatever's inside that Trojan horse that I mentioned earlier in the introduction. It's a love letter to them.
Of course.
You know, I mean, they can't, many people said, particularly at the time, that, you know, that's the kind of publicity they can't buy, you know. But in any event, they had their reasons, and so does that answer your question enough? Yeah.
You have that beautiful, very insightful line in the film when you talk about the internet. They said the internet, you go to the world, and with the newspaper, the world comes at you, and it brings this sense of wonder, you know, and of endless possibilities. It's this process, which is not us looking for something, but the world coming to us with everything, and. I assume you still read the paper, paper.
Well, let's just say I've fallen out of love. Yeah, I mean, come on, you know. I don't read the paper like I used to. I don't cut photographs out. I have to stop that. You know, I have my online sources that I read. You know, by the way, just there. I allude to it in the film, you know, that reading today's paper, the paper that we read today, means that it's been vetted. The world's still, we're still alive, you know. There's still a chance. There's still hope, you know. And anyway, I don't know what else to say on that. Yeah.
Question? Renee.
It's a wonderful film, one for the time capsule. Thank you very much. And I wondered, because I loved what will we call it? The narration? I don't know what to call it, but I was wondering about the process of writing an image. Like, how did you choose images and write pieces? Did you write the whole thing first and change? Do you know what I'm asking?
Of course. I get asked that with every film I've ever made. And I have to just say, there's no equation, you know, there's no answer to that. I can tell you that as an engaged artist doing this, I made notes to myself over the years, over the decades, you know, when I could read my handwriting and so forth. But I had some thoughts about what I was doing, self-reflections. But I suppose in that 2014 period, you know, I don't write and then illustrate, nor do I put picture and then write. It's very fluid, and it's a mystery to me. Okay, I do it in pieces. Yeah, it depends. Every film is different, but I might do a section, and you know, think like anything. I'm more. There are two kind of models for sculpture, right? One in which you take a block and you chisel it down, yeah, and the other is where you start with an armature and then you put pieces. I'm more the latter, you know, but never losing a sense of the whole and of how it's shaping. But to be honest with you, I guess this is the real answer, is that, you know, I have to give the film, I have to put credits on the film, produced, directed, edited by, written by, and all that stuff. I don't believe in the quadrification of or more of the credits. You know, I'm a filmmaker. I'm, in this case of this film and all of them, I'm the filmmaker, which is to say, I just do what what I have to do to make the film. Because when you write, it's not just I have to write the words that I can speak, so that I can edit those words into the story, and which part of me decides whether I read the paragraph correctly or read the words correctly. You know, you can put an emphasis in a sentence on a word, it changes the meaning of the sentence. So all I'm saying is all those slices of me, it's all one. So it's hard to answer your question.
Speaking of slices, the autobiography, the self, you know, your own self is a very fundamental part of all of your film. There is a very moving, at least to me, moment here when you show photographs of a child, and it's not Eli, is not your son, and so this kid that we don't know becomes your son, and your son becomes him, and I think it's incredibly powerful. How was that transition? I mean, when did that come to you? This porousness between what you see in the picture and your own life.
Well, I've been doing that in a lot of films over the years. Again, there's this arc and this shape between personal and universal, you know, and so I use archival footage, characters in archival footage as surrogates for me or my family all the time. I mean, I made a film about my insomnia. It's called Wide Awake, and I did a lot of archival research, and I found a lot of people, well, I found a lot of footage, I should say, of many people unable to sleep, tossing and turning, and they all became surrogates and they all became me. If I did it right, they were all me, you know. And so written another, or said another way, is that I always see the screen, the white screen, that we watch my films on, and I think it's true for all films, frankly, and I see that for fiction films too, that films operate for me as either windows or mirrors, okay? Windows in the sense that as you sit there and watch, you're looking at other lives, you're looking at stories, you're looking at the world, you're looking at the other, you know, you're learning newness, new stories, new characters, new people, whatever it is. But to me, for my work especially, I need to turn the screen into a mirror as well, where you can see yourself, you know, where you recognize part of yourself. And so one way I do that is through this sort of surrogacy, you know, of, I mean, I have, you know, I even say in the film, those are not my those are not my grandparents, you know, and I even say, I hope it's not too weird that I'm using other people as my family members, but the truth is I've spent so much time looking at them, studying them, loving them, that I feel connected to them. They're part of the cosmology and the universe that I have learned and cathected to very deeply, visually and experientially, in order to make this personal film. I mean, it's a personal film about the world, the newspaper containing the world.
You have time for one more, Diana?
So it's an extraordinary film. I have to confess, there were times when I couldn't take in the rapidity and the volume of the images, and I just had to tune out. And I don't know if other people have said that to you, and whether that's just me. I mean, it was so rich visually and so stunning.
Well,
and
thank you.
also, I think, calls up so many associations, because the period of history that you covered, obviously for those of us in your age group, was very redolent. So one has all one's own associations to those moments.
Sure.
But I'm particularly interested in the dialogue you set up in the film with your son and his generation. and those kids reading their news on the internet, and they're never going to have that experience. They don't subscribe to newspapers. They might read the New York Times on the internet, but it's one of maybe 5, 6, whatever, quite a number of periodicals that they're reading. And I'm just wondering, what are they losing? How can we convey to them what they're losing by not reading a newspaper? Because I felt it was kind of a love letter to an era where the newspaper is, so important. Anyway.
Yeah. 3 points. I'll try to. The first thing is, I'm the grandson of a custom tailor, so I use the sewing machine a lot. For example, so I'm sewing polka dots, and I'm sewing stripes, and I'm sewing color, and I'm sewing. So I'm just saying the film. It's all of my films really, but this film especially. They're very dense. They ask you to take in a lot. I'd like to think also, they demand or suggest or invite second and third viewings. That's okay, but it's supposed to work the first time too, But remember, part of the implied message of the film is the sheer volume, that news surrounds us. I've squeezed 7,000 plus photographs into this film, and I've compressed them, but the newspaper isn't the only source of news and images and sounds and stories. It's media. It's all around us. So it's kind of a metaphor in a way for all that. But yes, there are hundreds, maybe even 1,000 photographs in this film that are just 2 or 3 frames long. They're moving by quickly. Even the aforementioned pitcher, hitter, batter, and all that stuff. Yeah. As far as Eli and his generation goes, he's seen the film. He's brought some of his friends to see the film. He's not particularly moved to change. To be honest with you. And what's really funny? Well, now I can think it's funny. I didn't always. I also clip articles. By the by, over the years, I have shelves of articles that I've Xeroxed but even now, I cut out articles that I think would be of interest to him, like a really germane to what. And I keep, I put them. Well, now he's at college, but when he was in high school, and even now when he comes home, I save it. I want you to read this. And I keep thinking that after he's done reading it, he's gonna put it in like a drawer, or file it, or save it. I don't know. And after he's done reading it, it just goes in the garbage. He's not. Yeah. So, and by the way, if I can just take this to another, referring to your Eli question and his generation, and something I said earlier about a snapshot in time. Now when I see the film, just let me back up. So Eli has no experience with cassette tape recorders, manual typewriters, rotary telephones. He knows about them because I have them, and I fetishize them. So he knows, but his friends generally have no idea. But there will be a day. The bodegas on the corner that used to sell 600 photographs in the New York Times 10, 15 years ago, and now then when I made the film, then they were selling only 15. Now they sell none, 0. So they've had to reinvent themselves. Yeah, but the point that I want to say is that this film, as a snapshot in time, will change when newspapers do become extinct. This is like a pre-obituary for the newspaper, but it will change its impact, its affect, its implication when people in the room like, what? God, cassette recorders or 8-track tapes, what? And then the film will in a way, have fulfilled its mission. You know, I don't know if that's going to happen in my lifetime. You know, newspapers are being killed off at the local level, especially. I think the New York Times in particular takes a lot of pride in what they do, and I think they're very connected to their printed edition, and I think they'll be the last, you know, ones to go. I think they're going to make that go as long as possible. They still have substantial, in the hundreds of, you know, thousands of paper subscriptions, but that's going down, you know, 8 to 10% every year as their digital subscriptions are growing each year as well.
We have to close this because there is another film. Alan,
Understood.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, this film is not easy to see, so I'm very, you know, we're very grateful that Alan brought it for us and gave the time.
Thank you for inviting it. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.